The Tharkel Dominion was confident. For 100 years, their finest minds, strategists, and trainees had prepared for one thing: the peaceful domination of Earth. They did not plan to attack with weapons. They did not plan to destroy cities or hurt humans. Their plan was far more elegant: overwhelm Earth's networks, present themselves as inevitable rulers, and make humans submit voluntarily. The simulations had always worked. Every time, humanity surrendered in 45 minutes. From their command station orbiting just outside Earth's solar system, High Commander Zortak looked down at the blue planet with a mixture of admiration and impatience. The fleet behind him, sleek, silver, and silent, was the result of decades of careful design. Each ship carried hundreds of elite agents, trained to execute their century-long strategy with precision. "Today," Zortak said, his voice calm but firm, "we will complete what our ancestors began. In less than an hour, Earth will be ours. Remember, no weapons, no blood, only logic and persuasion." His trainees, some of whom had spent their entire lives in preparation, nodded. They had grown up learning Earth's languages, analyzing its culture, memorizing its economic systems, and simulating every possible response. They were ready. They were perfect. Yet, as they entered orbit, something strange happened. Earth did not panic. There were no signs of fear, no unusual military movements, no frantic radio chatter. It was as if the planet itself was calmly observing them. Zortak frowned. In every simulation, Earth reacted with chaos. But simulations were perfect. And reality, he thought, was simpler than humans believed. The first stage of the invasion was the network takeover. The Tharkel fleet activated silent drones designed to infiltrate Earth's digital infrastructure. These drones were equipped with the latest quantum hacking algorithms, capable of bypassing any firewall known to man or to alien. They were unstoppable. Unstoppable except for one minor issue. Humans were already one step ahead. Within seconds of deployment, the drones were detected. Notifications appeared on alien screens, not with alerts of resistance, but with calm messages. "Hello. We noticed your new visitors. Would you like help installing them properly?" Zortak blinked. His fleet had trained for decades to counter human defenses. They had assumed humans would fight, or at least panic. Instead, the humans were curious, muttered Lieutenant Carell. "They're not resisting. They are not programmed to surrender either," Zortak said. "This is unexpected. But we continue." The drones attempted their work again. Earth's networks responded instantly, adapting faster than the Tharkel had ever seen in simulation. Each attempted breach was countered with precision. By the second minute, the Tharkel realized something alarming. The humans knew exactly what they were going to do before they even tried it. The invasion plan had 5 stages. The first, network disruption, was failing spectacularly. The second, broadcasting messages of inevitable dominance, was ready to begin. The Tharkel had prepared pre-recorded messages, designed to make humans accept them as natural rulers. But when the first message was sent, Earth replied calmly, perfectly translating it into Tharkel language and pointing out flaws in their logic. "Your argument is understood," read the human response. "However, your conclusion is unnecessary. Cooperation is available." Zortak's eyes widened. Every simulation had ended with humans surrendering eagerly. Yet here, the humans were not surrendering. They were offering help. The third stage involved cultural manipulation drones. These tiny machines were meant to subtly influence human thought, guiding them toward submission without their awareness. But as soon as the drones were deployed, they began broadcasting Earth culture back at the aliens. Memes, dances, recipes, and jokes appeared on the Tharkel screens. Instead of fear or compliance, the aliens were confronted with humor, creativity, and curiosity. Carell laughed nervously. "They are Teaching us? Yes, Zortok admitted reluctantly. And it is working. The fourth stage was to disable satellites. The Tharkel had expected resistance, countermeasures, and perhaps a show of force from Earth's military. But instead, the satellites responded politely, repairing themselves and sending messages like, "Tampering detected. Repairs completed. Thank you for visiting." By the fourth minute, panic was starting to ripple through the Tharkel command. Their century of training, their careful planning, their simulations, all of it was falling apart not due to aggression, but due to human competence and calmness. "High Commander," Karel said, urgency in his voice. "We cannot continue. Every step is failing, and they are not resisting." Zortak clenched his claws. He had expected humans to be predictable, to act according to patterns, to submit when overwhelmed. But these humans were something different. They did not panic. They did not resist. They simply adapted, and in the process, dismantled the Tharkel strategy piece by piece. It was then that the final stage was supposed to begin. Step 5, presenting themselves as inevitable rulers. The aliens had prepared elaborate ceremonies, speeches, and demonstrations of superiority. But as they activated the first broadcast, the humans responded with an invitation. "Welcome to Earth. We noticed your visit. Would you like tea? Perhaps a tour of our cities?" The Tharkel froze. The words were simple, polite, innocuous, yet they carried an unimaginable weight. Their century of planning had been undone by courtesy and cleverness. Zortok stared at the screen. How is this possible? They should be afraid. They should submit. "They are not us," Karel said quietly. "They do not react as we expect." Perhaps we misunderstood. Across the fleet, the trainees began to murmur. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. And in the first 6 minutes of the invasion, everything they had known about humans was proven wrong. The species they had assumed to be weak, chaotic, and easy to manipulate was instead precise, clever, and astonishingly calm. Zortok realized something profound. They were not failing because they lacked skill. They were failing because humans were not the predictable creatures their simulations claimed. They were faster, smarter, and infinitely more adaptable. Every century of preparation had been based on assumptions that were not true. The fleet hung silently in orbit. The drones that were supposed to control Earth's networks were now displaying cat videos, memes, and cooking instructions. The satellites that were supposed to be disabled were broadcasting music, astronomy lessons, and polite reminders of interstellar etiquette. And the humans, calm and collected, continued to communicate with unprecedented clarity and kindness. Zortak looked at his team. "Prepare for Step 6, he said, though even he did not know what it would entail. There was no further plan. The humans had rendered the Tharkel strategy obsolete. They had expected surrender, compliance, even confusion. What they found instead was intelligence, patience, and a willingness to help. The Tharkel had trained a century to invade Earth. But in these first 6 minutes, they began to understand something important. This species was unlike any other, and if they wished to succeed not by force, but by influence, they would have to learn first. Karel whispered, almost to himself. "We are the students now." Zortok did not reply. He could only watch as his plans collapsed, piece by piece, under the calm, precise, and utterly human response. And for the first time in a century, he felt uncertainty. Above all, he realized that this invasion was not going to be about control. It was going to be about understanding. And humans were already far ahead of him. The Tharkel had prepared for conquest. But they had not prepared for the quiet brilliance of humanity. And Earth, calm and radiant beneath them, continued to wait, patient and confident, as if to say, "We are ready for you, no matter what you bring." The Tharkel Dominion had entered Earth orbit with confidence. Their century of preparation, simulations, and training promised an easy victory. But 6 minutes into the operation, confidence gave way to confusion, and confusion soon became disbelief. High Commander Zortok watched as the first network breach attempt failed. The quantum drones that were supposed to silently infiltrate Earth's communications had been stopped before they even began. Instead of alerts of panic or resistance, polite notifications appeared. Your device has been detected. Would you like assistance with installation? Zortok's claws tightened on the edge of his command console. Assistance? He barked. How is this possible? Lieutenant Karel shook his head. I don't know, High Commander. Every strategy we prepared is anticipated. Every simulation we ran. Irrelevant. The fleet trembled. Not from weapons fire, but from the sheer impossibility of what they were witnessing. Humans had not reacted with fear. They had not hidden or fled. They had not resisted. They had adapted, and the adaptation was faster, smarter, and stranger than anything the Tharkel had imagined. The second stage of the invasion began. The broadcasting of messages intended to assert dominance and persuade humans of the Tharkel inevitability. Carefully crafted speeches, intended to overwhelm human logic and make compliance seem like the only reasonable choice, were activated, but the humans responded instantly. They did not panic. They did not argue. They merely sent a polite reply. We received your message. Thank you for your concern. Would you like directions to our capital cities? Perhaps a cup of tea? The command room fell silent. Zortok stared at the words, unable to comprehend the calmness and civility. For decades, he had trained for this moment, and in 6 minutes, it was crumbling not through force, not through resistance, but through courtesy. Karel leaned closer. High Commander. The third stage. Cultural influence. The drones are being hijacked. Zortok's eyes widened. Hijacked? Yes. They are not influencing humans. Humans are influencing them. They are teaching our drones. Human dances. Memes. Recipes. Even jokes. Zortok exhaled sharply. It was absurd. Every plan, every century of preparation, was unraveling before his eyes. He had expected fear, confusion, and eventual compliance. Instead, humans were polite, clever, and infinitely adaptive. On the surface, Earth appeared calm. Cities continued their normal rhythms, people went about their daily lives, and humanity's advanced AIs began interacting directly with Tharkel systems. One by one, the fleet's satellites were contacted and corrected by Earth's systems, sometimes with humorous messages. Your orbit adjustment is slightly inefficient. Would you like a better plan? P.S. Try not to bump into our weather satellites. The aliens could not process it. They had prepared for resistance. They had trained for human aggression. They had simulated fear, chaos, and panic. But humor, efficiency, and calm cooperation were not part of their training. The 4th minute passed. Zortok sent orders to deploy the final stage. Step 5. The presentation of the Tharkel as inevitable rulers. Ships opened their communication arrays, projecting grand holographic displays of Tharkel history, culture, and achievements. Their words were precise, logical, and meant to impress. Earth responded, not with submission, but with curiosity. Impressive technology, fascinating culture. We notice your stress. Would you like some assistance managing it? Zortok froze. Assistance? They were the invaders. They were supposed to be in control. And yet, humans were offering help. Calm, patient, and confident. They dismantled the Tharkel strategy without a single weapon fired. The trainees were in panic. They had prepared their entire lives for this moment. Every simulation had been followed to perfection. And now, 6 minutes in, it was all meaningless. High Commander, Karel said quietly, the drones have been entirely repurposed. They are teaching us human etiquette, music, and games. We cannot stop them. Zortok sat in stunned silence. He had trained his mind for every scenario. Surrender, aggression, negotiation, confusion. But he had never imagined being taught by humans in the middle of an invasion. By the 5th minute, the fleet's internal communications began to reflect the alien disbelief. Reports poured in. Our main drone is teaching humans a dance called the moonwalk. The economic strategy AI is now learning about Earth's stock markets and giving advice on efficiency. Our holographic presentations are being critiqued politely for lack of clarity. The High Commander's mind raced. The humans were not resisting, they were dismantling centuries of preparation with effortless competence and patience. It was then that a final communication arrived. A single message, clear and calm, filled the entire fleet's network. Your invasion attempt has been safely neutralized. Please relax. We detected no hostile intent. Would you like tea? The words were simple. The tone was polite. Yet they carried an unimaginable weight. The Tharkel had trained for a century to control this planet. And now the humans were offering tea. Zortak's claws dug into the console. Tea? Yes. High Commander, tea, Karel repeated. They are unaffected by our presence. They are friendly. Across the fleet, the trainees began to laugh nervously. Their entire lives had been devoted to this moment. And yet, here it was, ending not in conquest, but in humble bewilderment. The 6th minute passed. The Tharkel realized the truth. They had not been defeated by force. They had been defeated by human intelligence, adaptability, and kindness. Every simulation, every training exercise, every calculated move had failed against a species that could anticipate, adapt, and respond without aggression. Zortak looked at the communication screens again. Humans were sending new messages, offering optimization, suggestions for energy grids, guidance for fleet navigation, friendly advice on time management. Every suggestion was presented politely, clearly, and without condescension. The trainees muttered among themselves. We are the students, one whispered. Yes, Zortak said slowly. We are the students. We thought we were teaching them, but in reality, we have much to learn. The fleet hovered silently in orbit. The invasion had lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes had been enough to reveal the truth. Humans were unlike any species the Tharkel had encountered. They were clever, calm, and overwhelmingly capable. They did not rely on aggression to assert dominance. They relied on intelligence, adaptation, and cooperation. For the first time, Zortak felt uncertainty. He had been trained to expect control, to expect compliance, to expect fear. Instead, he found calm, brilliant, and curious minds staring back at him. Karel finally spoke, voice trembling with a mixture of awe and disbelief. High Commander, what do we do now? Zortak exhaled, slowly, deliberately. We learn. That is what we do. We came to teach. But they have already taught us more than we could have imagined. Across Earth, people continued their lives, unaware that a fleet of highly trained aliens had arrived, expecting surrender, only to be quietly and completely neutralized in less than 6 minutes. There was no panic. There was no destruction. There was only human brilliance, calmness, and adaptability. And as the 6th minute ended, the Tharkel fleet remained in orbit, silent, humbled, and confused. The humans had won not through force, not through cunning, not through weapons or trickery, but through something far more powerful. Their minds, their creativity, and their patience. For the Tharkel, the century of preparation had ended in an instant. They had trained to conquer a planet. Instead, they had been taught how far behind they truly were. And above all, High Commander Zortak realized that this was only the beginning. The humans were not aggressive. They were not easily controlled. They were patient, brilliant, and unshakably clever. And for every century the Tharkel had spent planning, humans had spent decades anticipating them. Zortak looked down at the blue planet, calm beneath them. and felt a mixture of awe and fear. The invasion had lasted 6 minutes, but the lesson, he knew, would last a lifetime. The Tharkel fleet hung in Earth orbit, still stunned. They had spent a century preparing for conquest. Yet in 6 minutes, all their plans had collapsed. Not by war, not by human resistance, but by human intelligence, adaptability, and kindness. For the first time in their history, the Tharkel faced a species they could not manipulate, control, or predict. High Commander Zortok paced the bridge of his flagship. His mind raced, struggling to process what had just happened. Across the fleet, his officers murmured in disbelief. Drones that had been meant to subtly manipulate humans were now teaching themselves Earth dances, recipes, and humor. Satellites they expected to disable were operating perfectly and offering polite suggestions. The humans had neutralized the invasion without a single aggressive act. Karel, standing beside Zortok, shook his head. "High Commander, what do we do now? We cannot continue the invasion. Everything we trained for, useless. They have turned us into students," Zortak sighed. "We came to teach. And now, it seems, we must learn." The first step was contact. Zortak initiated a direct communication link to Earth's leadership, expecting either hostility or confusion. Instead, the response was calm, measured, and almost cheerful. "Welcome to Earth. We have observed your arrival. You seem stressed. Would you like assistance? Perhaps a tour of our cities or a cup of tea?" The words echoed through the fleet, simple yet shocking. Zortok realized the humans did not see them as enemies. They did not see them as threats. They saw them as visitors, curious, capable, and in need of guidance. It took hours, though the Tharkel did not notice time passing to establish proper communication protocols. Humans patiently explained every step. How their drones had been repurposed to explore human culture. How Earth's AIs had been programmed to anticipate alien technological tactics. How humans had long prepared for contact with species who might intend harm. Every explanation was calm, thorough, and without accusation. There was no anger, no fear, no desire to punish. The humans simply provided clarity and guidance, leaving the Tharkel to adapt. During the first meeting, Zortok and his officers were surprised to find themselves seated not as conquerors, but as students. Earth's leaders, human diplomats, scientists, and engineers presented a map of Earth's systems, its cities, its energy networks, and even its social structures. "Your systems are impressive," said one diplomat. "But we have found ways to improve efficiency and sustainability. We would be happy to share these with you." Zortok's jaw dropped. For a century, the Tharkel had believed themselves to be superior. Yet here were humans offering guidance with calm confidence. Even more astonishing, the humans did not demand gratitude or submission, they only offered partnership. Over the next few days, the Tharkel fleet was integrated into Earth's orbital networks. Drones, once used for manipulation, were now engaged in learning Earth culture, human art, mathematics, music, and philosophy. Satellites monitored their own systems with suggestions from human engineers. Communication hubs operated flawlessly under human guidance, politely offering corrections when mistakes were made. For the Tharkel, the experience was humbling. The century of preparation, the exhaustive simulations, the countless hours of training, all were rendered secondary to a single truth. Humans were cleverer than they had ever imagined. Karel, standing at the observation deck, watched Earth rotate beneath them. Cities gleamed with light. Rivers flowed through green plains, and clouds drifted across the blue atmosphere. "High Commander, it is beautiful. And they are so calm, so capable. I do not feel fear. I feel awe." Zortok nodded slowly. "We trained to rule them. And yet, here, I feel we are the ones learning. Perhaps we were arrogant. Perhaps we underestimated them." Even more surprisingly, the humans encouraged exploration, curiosity, and even amusement. They invited the Tharkel to visit cities, meet citizens, and participate in Earth customs. Drones delivered demonstrations of human music, food, and games. The aliens found themselves laughing, learning, and adapting in ways they had never anticipated. The galaxy watched in astonishment. News of the 6-minute failed invasion spread through interstellar networks. Other species who had once regarded humans as backward or primitive were forced to reconsider. A century of alien training had been undone, not by weapons or strategy, but by intellect, kindness, and calm ingenuity. Zortok realized something profound. Humans did not need dominance to demonstrate superiority. Their brilliance was inherent in their ability to adapt, think, and collaborate. The Tharkel had come to conquer. But in doing so, they had discovered a species far beyond their expectations. As days turned into weeks, the Tharkel began to integrate fully. They participated in scientific research, shared knowledge of their technology, and learned Earth's philosophies. What had begun as an invasion transformed into a collaborative partnership. The century of training had not been wasted. It had prepared the Tharkel to recognize patterns, adapt quickly, and learn from a species unlike any other. Zortok began writing reports, not of conquest, but of learning. He documented Earth's systems, human strategies, and cultural richness. Every day brought new surprises. Humans were capable of creating solutions for problems the Tharkel had assumed were unsolvable. And they did it with patience, humor, and generosity. The High Commander reflected on the irony. A species that had trained to dominate had instead been dominated not by force, but by intellect. And yet, there was no shame. There was only respect, curiosity, and a desire to learn. Karel spoke one evening, watching the sun set over Earth's horizon. High Commander, do you think the galaxy will ever understand this? That we came to invade, but found teachers instead? Zortak smiled faintly. Perhaps not. But we understand. That is enough. We came seeking control. We found wisdom. We came seeking submission. We found friendship. That is the greatest lesson any species can learn. By the end of the first month, the Tharkel Dominion had officially signed the Human-Alien Knowledge Accord. A pact to share knowledge, explore together, and grow in understanding. The aliens were no longer invaders. They were scholars, students, and collaborators. The humans, in turn, observed the Tharkel with calm curiosity. They knew other civilizations might attempt similar invasions in the future. And yet, they did not prepare to fight. Instead, they prepared to teach, adapt, and guide, knowing that intelligence and cooperation were far more powerful than aggression. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The humans had stopped an invasion in 6 minutes. But more astonishingly, they had turned the invaders into allies, learners, and friends. Civilizations that had once underestimated humanity now approached with caution, admiration, and a touch of fear. For humans did not need weapons to prove superiority, they only needed intellect, patience, and a willingness to help. The Tharkel themselves had transformed. Once proud conquerors, they had become humble students. They had come with certainty, expecting control, expecting surrender, expecting fear. Instead, they found human brilliance, calm, and generosity. In quiet moments, Zortok would look at Earth and reflect on the most important lesson he had learned. It is not power or force that defines a species. It is intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to guide and collaborate. That is the strength of humanity. The 6-minute invasion had changed everything, not only for the Tharkel Dominion, but for the galaxy. Humanity had proven that cleverness, calmness, and curiosity could overcome any challenge, and that cooperation could be more powerful than conquest. And for the Tharkel, the century of preparation had not been wasted. It had prepared them to recognize greatness, adapt quickly, and learn with humility. In the end, the aliens who had trained to conquer became students. The humans who had never sought conquest became teachers. And the galaxy watched in awe. wondering if any other species could match the calm brilliance of a planet that had stopped an invasion in 6 minutes, not with weapons, but with mind, ingenuity, and heart. Earth spun silently beneath them, blue, calm, and full of life. Above it, the Tharkel fleet hovered, humbled and learning, a reminder to all civilizations that the greatest victories were not always won by strength, but by understanding, wisdom, and the courage to teach and to learn. And so, what had begun as an attempted invasion became a lasting lesson. Humans did not conquer through fear. Humans did not conquer through force. Humans conquered through intelligence, adaptability, and kindness. 6 minutes had been enough to prove it.